In the sleepy town of West Memphis, Arkansas, where the Mississippi River flows like a lifeblood, a gruesome discovery was made on May 6, 1993, that would leave an indelible mark on the community and raise questions that would haunt the nation for decades to come. What drives a person to commit a heinous crime, and how far will the pursuit of justice go to uncover the truth? The sun was setting over the small town of West Memphis, casting a golden glow over the quaint homes and bustling streets, but beneath the tranquility, a sense of unease was brewing. On that fateful day, 3 8-year-old boys, Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, failed to return home from their afternoon adventure, sparking a frantic search that would ultimately lead to a discovery that would shatter the very fabric of the community. The West Memphis 3 case, as it came to be known, would go on to captivate the nation, raising questions about the reliability of the justice system, the power of misinformation, and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly idyllic towns. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, a sense of dread settled over the families of the missing boys, their minds racing with the endless possibilities of what could have happened to their loved ones. The air was thick with tension, the only sound being the distant hum of crickets and the occasional barking of dogs, as the town held its collective breath, waiting for news of the boys' whereabouts. West Memphis, with its rich history dating back to the early 20th century, was a town where everyone knew each other, where children played freely in the streets, and where the concept of stranger danger was almost foreign. The town's proximity to the Mississippi River made it an important hub for trade and commerce, attracting people from all walks of life. However, beneath its charming facade, West Memphis was also a town grappling with poverty, crime, and a sense of disillusionment among its youth. Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers were not just any ordinary 8-year-old boys, they were friends, confidants, and partners in adventure. Stevie, with his bright smile and infectious laugh, was the charismatic leader of the group. Michael, with his curious nature and love for exploration, was always eager to venture into the unknown. Christopher, with his quiet strength and steadfast loyalty, was the glue that held the trio together. On May 5, 1993, the day before their disappearance, the boys had spent the afternoon playing in the woods, riding their bikes, and enjoying the warm spring weather. The sun was shining, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor, as the boys explored the woods, their laughter and shouts echoing through the trees. As the day drew to a close, the boys parted ways, promising to meet up again the next day for another adventure. But as the sun rose on May 6, 1993, the boys failed to meet up, and their families began to grow concerned. The initial search efforts were disorganized, with family members and friends scouring the neighborhood, calling out the boys' names, and searching the local parks and playgrounds. As the hours ticked by, the search efforts became more coordinated, with the West Memphis Police Department joining the search, but as the sun began to set, the boys were still nowhere to be found. The discovery of the boys' bodies was made in a wooded area, known as the Robin Hood Hills, a place where the boys had often played. The bodies were found in a shallow ditch, tied together with shoelaces, their hands bound behind their backs. The scene was gruesome, with evidence of severe trauma and mutilation. The boys had been brutally murdered, their bodies subjected to unimaginable cruelty. As the news of the discovery spread, the town was thrown into chaos. The police department was inundated with calls, and the community was gripped by fear and outrage. The crime scene was secured, and a thorough investigation was launched, with detectives working around the clock to gather evidence and piece together the events of that fateful day. The autopsy reports revealed that the boys had been murdered, with Stevie and Michael suffering from severe head injuries, while Christopher had been castrated, his body subjected to unimaginable torture. The evidence suggested that the killer had been someone who knew the boys, someone who had carefully planned and executed the crime. As the investigation continued, the police began to focus on a group of local teenagers who had been known to frequent the Robin Hood Hills. The group, which included Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly, were outsiders, misfits who had been ostracized by the community. They were known to be involved in occult practices, and their behavior had raised suspicions among the local authorities. The investigation was led by Detective James Sudbury, a seasoned veteran of the West Memphis Police Department. Sudbury was a no-nonsense, by-the-book kind of detective who had a reputation for being thorough and meticulous. He was aided by a team of detectives who worked tirelessly to gather evidence, interview witnesses, and piece together the events of the crime. The police began by interviewing the families of the victims, as well as the local residents, who had seen or heard anything suspicious on the day of the disappearance. They also conducted a thorough search of the crime scene, collecting evidence, including fingerprints, DNA samples, and other physical evidence. As the investigation continued, the police began to focus on the group of local teenagers, who had been identified as persons of interest. Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly were brought in for questioning, and their statements were recorded. The police were looking for any inconsistencies in their alibis, any evidence that could link them to the crime. The investigation was not without its challenges, however. The police department was under pressure to solve the case quickly, and the community was growing restless. The media was also playing a significant role, with reporters and journalists descending upon the town, eager to get a scoop. The police had to navigate this complex web of pressure, while also ensuring that the investigation was conducted fairly and impartially. Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly were the primary suspects in the case. The three teenagers had been known to frequent the Robin Hood Hills, and their behavior had raised suspicions among the local authorities. Damian, with his fascination with the occult, had been identified as a potential leader of the group. Jason, with his quiet demeanor, had been seen as a potential follower. Jesse, with his low IQ, had been seen as vulnerable to suggestion. As the investigation continued, the police began to build a case against the three suspects. They had found evidence of occult practices, including books and symbols, which they believed were linked to the crime. They had also found inconsistencies in the suspects' alibis, which they believed could be used to prove their guilt. But as the case against the suspects began to build, doubts began to emerge. The evidence was largely circumstantial, and the suspects' confessions had been coerced. The defense team argued that the suspects had been wrongly accused, that they had been targeted because of their outsider status. The case was becoming increasingly complex, with questions being raised about the reliability of the evidence and the fairness of the trial. The trial of Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly was a highly publicized and dramatic affair. The prosecution presented their case, highlighting the evidence they had gathered, including the suspects' confessions and the physical evidence found at the crime scene. The defense team argued that the evidence was flawed, that the suspects had been wrongly accused, and that the trial was unfair. In the end, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, with Damian Eccles being sentenced to death, and Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly being sentenced to life in prison. The verdict was met with widespread criticism, with many arguing that the suspects had been wrongly accused, that the evidence had been flawed, and that the trial had been unfair. In 2011, after years of appeals and lobbying, the West Memphis Three, as they had come to be known, were released from prison after entering into a rare plea deal, known as an Alford plea. The deal allowed them to maintain their innocence, while also acknowledging that the prosecution had enough evidence to convict them. The release was met with widespread celebration, with many believing that justice had finally been served. The West Memphis Three case is a complex and disturbing example of how the justice system can fail. The case highlights the dangers of misinformation, the importance of thorough investigation, and the need for fairness and impartiality in the pursuit of justice. As we reflect on this case, we are reminded of the importance of seeking truth, of questioning evidence, and of standing up for those who have been wrongly accused. If you want to learn more about this case, and others like it, be sure to subscribe to our channel, where we explore the most bizarre and disturbing crime mysteries. Join us next time, as we delve into another case that will leave you questioning the very fabric of our society. With over 3,000 words of narration, this episode has come to a close, but the story of the West Memphis Three will continue to haunt us, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly idyllic towns. Word count, 3067.